AeroPeru 603. Torre, AeroPeru 603.
AeroPeru 603, Torre, prosigan.
Que declaramos emergencia, no tenemos instrumentos básicos, ni altímetro, ni velocímetro. Declaramos emergencia.
Without essential instruments, Aero Peru Flight 603, September 29, 1996. Only 3 days remained before the catastrophe. Dawn was breaking at Jorge Chávez International Airport in Lima. It was around 6:30 in the morning when a Boeing 757 lined up on the runway for takeoff. Its route was scheduled between Lima and Mexico City with an approximate duration of 4 hours and 50 minutes each way. At 6:45, the modern jet began its takeoff roll. The powerful roar of its engines startled a flock of birds near the runway. One of them unexpectedly crossed the path and was ingested by the left engine. In the cockpit, the pilots noticed a slight thud, but the engine continued functioning normally and no warning system was triggered. Thus, the aircraft continued its route to Mexico without further incident. The aircraft belonged to Aero Peru, the country's flag carrier, which at the time was celebrating 23 years of operations. It had been manufactured on November 16, 1992, making it just 3 years and 11 months old. It was leased by the company a year and a half after its construction and had been flying in Peruvian skies for over 2 years. It was the second Boeing 757 in the airline's fleet. At the time, Aero Peru was going through serious financial difficulties, allegedly due to poor management. Citing this reason, the government decided to privatize the company in 1993, with Aeromexico emerging as the strongest buyer. After the acquisition, the Mexican airline aimed to revitalize the carrier. The corporate image was revamped, safety standards were adjusted, and operations were expanded to international destinations. Officially, Aero Peru was said to be entering a new phase of growth, although in reality, corruption and political interests continued to shape its course. Upon arrival in Mexico and after disembarking the passengers, a routine visual inspection of the aircraft was carried out. There it was discovered that 2 blades of the left engine were damaged. It was then ordered that, upon return to Lima, the aircraft should be taken directly to the hangar for repairs. Back in Peru, and following the mechanic's instructions, the 757 was moved to the hangar to replace the damaged turbine components. The work had to be completed quickly. In aviation, an aircraft grounded on the tarmac generates no income, only losses. Thus, the maintenance team rushed to complete the repair against the clock. It was October 1st, 18 hours before the disaster. The Boeing 757, registration OB1718, sporting Aero Peru's new livery, white upper fuselage, a blue and red stripe across the middle, and a metallic underbelly, had only been on the ground for 2 days. While it was in the hangar, it also received a touch-up paint job. To protect the static ports, the technicians covered them with adhesive tape. The engine had already been repaired, and everything seemed to be in order. Around 11 at night, the aircraft painter finished his job. At 11:10 p.m., the aircraft went through a maintenance inspection. 2 maintenance supervisors examined it, followed by a quality control inspector. No one noticed anything unusual. Around 11:50, the captain arrived for his pre-flight inspection. Using a flashlight, he walked around the aircraft's exterior, but also failed to detect any irregularities. After a long day in the hangar, the 757 was towed to the apron. In the departure lounge, 61 passengers, many connecting from Miami en route to Chile, received the long-awaited announcement they could board. On board were also 7 flight attendants and 2 experienced pilots. The captain was Eric Schreiber, 58 years old with over 21,000 flight hours and an extensive career in Peruvian aviation. In addition to being a Boeing 757 instructor, he served as the airline's chief pilot. His co-pilot was David Fernandez, 42 years old, with nearly 8,000 flight hours, 719 of which were in that specific model. A veteran crew aboard a young aircraft was preparing for a routine night flight. Shortly after midnight, Boeing 757 registration OB1718 began taxiing toward the threshold of runway 15 at Jorge Chávez Airport. The crew completed their checklists without issue. Air traffic control assigned them transponder code 5603, under which they would appear on radar. Conditions were favorable. The atmosphere was calm, with no storms or rain. Although there was 69% lunar illumination that night, the moon had set hours earlier, leaving the sky completely dark. This posed no problem for an instrument flight aboard an aircraft equipped with modern navigation technology. At 12:42 a.m. on October 2nd, 1996, the captain applied thrust. The Pratt & Whitney engines roared as the 757 accelerated down the runway and lifted off into the southern sky. Within seconds of climbing, co-pilot Fernandez noticed something strange in his instruments. The speed and altitude readings didn't make sense. In the cockpit, the static pressure indicators were obstructed, causing the altimeters and airspeed indicators to display contradictory or impossible data. Almost immediately, multiple alarms began sounding. Overspeed warnings, stall alerts, and messages indicating airspeed discrepancies between the instruments. Captain Schreiber took control and ordered a right turn while reviewing the emergency procedure manuals. But the situation was chaotic. The flight computer was receiving incorrect data from the block sensors, and each alarm that went off only added to the confusion. The crew decided to disconnect the autopilot and declare an emergency. Lima, Aero Peru 603, we have an emergency. We've lost basic instruments, no altimeter, no airspeed indicators. From that moment on, in complete darkness and over the Pacific Ocean, the crew was flying without any reliable references. The Aero Peru 757 was moving away from the coast and out over the sea, while confusion in the cockpit continued to grow. The pilots couldn't agree on what was happening. The alarms were sounding non-stop, and the instruments were giving impossible readings. Co-pilot Fernandez was trying to stabilize the aircraft, but the indicators were showing contradictory numbers. At times, they seemed normal, giving the crew brief moments of confidence, only to then return to absurd and conflicting values. The Lima area controller, observing the aircraft on radar, saw it as stable at around 10,700 feet. What he didn't know was that the radar was receiving the same faulty data coming from the 757 systems. In reality, the plane was in a continuous descent toward the ocean. Each time the dynamic pressure in the block sensors changed, the airspeed indicators became even more erratic, sometimes displaying overspeed, other times indicating a stall. This triggered opposite alarms simultaneously, overspeed warnings alongside stall alerts. Convinced at times that the aircraft was at risk of stalling, the captain pulled the nose up sharply, but in doing so, without realizing it, he was actually steepening the descent angle. The ground proximity warning system, a GPWS, began to sound. Terrain, terrain, pull up, pull up. But the crew, overwhelmed by the flood of alarms, believed it was just another false warning from the faulty instruments. They chose to ignore it. Is there any aircraft that can assist us to confirm our speed and altitude? But at that moment, there was no other aircraft nearby that could provide visual confirmation. They were alone, in the total darkness of the Pacific, trying to fly without essential data. Inside the cockpit, the tension was unbearable. The alarms wouldn't stop, and every attempt to correct the flight only made things worse. Although the instruments showed that the plane was level, in reality it continued descending toward the sea. Exhausted, the co-pilot requested support from ATC Lima 603. We have no basic instruments, no altimeter or airspeed indicators. We are declaring an emergency. The controller tried to help, but the radar was also displaying faulty information. According to the screen, the 757 was still at nearly 10,000 feet, when in truth it was descending dangerously. Suddenly, the GPWS issued its warning. Whoop, whoop, pull up, pull up! The captain raised the nose. The aircraft climbed for a few seconds, but soon a false overspeed warning appeared, sowing more doubt. They disengaged the autopilot and tried to continue manually, but without real references, everything was chaos. The descent became inevitable. The cockpit was overwhelmed with alarms and voices urging calm. In the darkness, with no visible horizon, it was impossible to tell the sky from the sea.
aviones que puedan salir a rescate de nosotros. Espérate, no.
Sí, por eso vamos a coordinar de inmediato. Está coordinando de inmediato. Estaría listo para 6 minutos para proceder a la ayuda.
2 mile terrain. 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 2 mile terrain.
Alarma de terreno.
2 mile terrain.
Alarma de terreno.
2 mile terrain. Wind shear. Wind shear. Wind shear.
No le entiendo.
2 mile
Se
terrain.
menciona que está efectuando
2 mile terrain.
está circulando hacia el oeste.
Sí, Mateo, estamos rumbo a 250, pero estamos yendo hacia el mar porque tenemos mensaje de terreno, alarma de terreno.
Sí, afirmativo, pero es que está a 42 millas, volando por rumbo hacia el oeste, rumbo 250, hacia el oeste.
Estamos sobre el agua, ¿no es cierto?
2 mile terrain. 2 mile
Sí,
terrain.
¿cuál es la altura que indica el avión? Tiene
2
una
mile terrain. 2 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 mile terrain.
Estamos impactando en agua.
2 mile terrain. 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 2 mile terrain.
At 1:11 a.m. on October 2nd, 1996, Aero Peru's Boeing 757 crashed into the Pacific Ocean, just 29 minutes after takeoff. There were no survivors among the 70 people on board, 61 passengers and 9 crew members. The investigation concluded that the static ports had been left covered with adhesive tape after maintenance. This rendered the flight instruments useless. The error went undetected during pre-flight checks, and Boeing had no procedure in place for this specific type of emergency. The crash became one of the most remembered tragedies in Latin American aviation. A human error on the ground, incomplete inspections, and the lack of proper protocols were enough to cost 70 lives in just half an hour. Aero Peru, already weakened, would cease operations in March 1999. Beyond technical reports, the tragedy left a deep void. Families, passengers, and crew members who never returned home. This account is a tribute to each one of them. May they rest in peace, and may their memory keep alive the vital importance of learning from our mistakes.